I'm unhappy when I'm with her.
Michael, you shouldn't be with someone who doesn't make you happy.
I'm happy sometimes.
From Sam and Diane on Cheers to Ross and Rachel of Friends, the trope of the will they won't they couple has long been a staple of television sitcoms. The idea is that audiences will root for their pair to get together and reliably tune in season after season to find out what happens. At least that's usually the idea. Because with Michael and Jan on The Office, it was the exact opposite. Audiences tuned in praying they wouldn't end up together.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No!
And we're gonna dive headfirst into that dumpster fire, but before we do, why don't you take a moment to subscribe to the Nerdstalgic channel. The first season of The Office was only 6 episodes, but that was enough to get us familiar with the show's main characters. Steve Carell's Michael Scott was the incompetent, obnoxious branch manager of the Scranton branch of the Dunder Mifflin paper company, and Jim and Pam were the standard couple-to-be fans were intended to hope would someday find each other. The Office was all about the humor of bad vibes and extreme social awkwardness. So it's not surprising that alongside Jim and Pam, the show also developed what was essentially the antithesis of the normal will they won't they couple, Michael and Jan.
This does, however, mean that there's going to be downsizing.
Me no wanna hear that, Jan. Because downsizing is a bitch. It is a real bitch.
Played by Melora Hardin, Michael's boss, Jan Levinson Gold, was only actually seen on screen in one episode of the first season, but it was clear that Michael had a thing for her. When it came to him, however, Jan was, to put it kindly, all business. In fact, Jan detested Michael, even to the point of hoping the whole Scranton branch would close just so she wouldn't have to talk to him anymore. But then in season 2, episode 7, The Client, everything started to change.
Okay, probably going to go late tonight, burning the midnight tequila.
Michael and Jan meet a client about a crucial account they needed to land, and as Jan introduces herself, she reveals she's dropped the gold from her name and is very recently divorced. During dinner, she drinks heavily, while Michael uses his prodigious sales skills to close the deal.
They're expecting me to make cuts.
Well, corporate's gonna go ballistic, but you think we could, Jan?
In a celebratory moment afterwards, the two kiss and head back to Jan's place. Jan regrets it the next morning and tells Michael not to discuss it with anyone. The hookup was a huge surprise for audiences, but behind the scenes, it had been a long time coming. In fact, the idea of a relationship between Michael and Jan, who was originally only intended to be a season 1 guest star, was actually conceived on the set of the pilot. According to Hardin, after shooting her initial scenes, Carell and showrunner Greg Daniels both noted a strange chemistry between Michael and Jan.
We were all laughing at how kind of weirdly interesting Jan and Michael were together. We should have them hook up.
Wow!
Because we kind of felt like there was a little spark between them, and we kind of conjured it on the pilot.
If you've seen our episode about the real reason Michael hates Toby, you know the Office creative team was prone to following those kind of on-set instincts. As a result, Daniels decided that if the show got a pickup beyond its initial 6 episodes, Jan would stick around and have a romance with Michael. And true to that show's sense of humor, that romance turned out to be excruciating to watch right from the get-go after Michael brags about sleeping with Jan to the other Dunder Mifflin branch managers. The company's CFO finds out, endangering their jobs, and Jan, not nearly as angry as she had the right to be, forcefully makes it clear to Michael that they're not going to have a relationship. But after he diffuses the situation in a way that exonerates her at his own expense, she gives him an encouraging kiss. As promising as that seems, the season ends with an increasingly domineering Jan becoming jealous after seeing Michael on a date with another woman at the company's casino night.
Love triangle drama. All worked out in the end, though. The hero got the girl. Who saw that coming?
That sets up season 3, which finds her spitefully doing everything she can to make Michael's life at work more difficult. Despite all the red flags, however, they would quietly start hooking up again. Their secret would come out when Michael tries to impress a colleague by sending him a racy photo of himself and Jan in Jamaica, but sends the email to the wrong person, allowing the pic to go public. This egregious violation of her privacy notwithstanding, Jan tells Michael she's decided, against her better judgment, to stay in what she recognizes as a potentially destructive relationship. That would make most people think twice, but Michael only can respond by telling Jan,
You complete me.
and even Jan is stunned. This brutal moment comes to define their whole relationship. Michael was a desperate, lonely man who craved love and would accept it in any form at any cost. Meanwhile, Jan was an angry, bitter, depressed divorcee, slumming it with someone she not only didn't respect, but for whom she had genuine contempt. As pretty much everyone but Michael could tell, it was a recipe for disaster. and predictably, things only got worse from there. Jan decides to make their relationship official by disclosing it to HR, but immediately regrets it after Michael embarrasses her by talking about it too much at their boss David Wallace's cocktail party.
Do you remember Michael Scott from Scranton Branch?
How are you, Michael?
Jan and I are lovers. It feels so good to finally say that out loud.
After unsuccessfully taking him to the bathroom for sex in an attempt to shut him up, she tells him she's lost interest in the relationship now, that it's no longer a secret.
That's the way you feel, my lady, then you have hurt me greatly.
Michael.
Greatly.
Please don't cry.
I'm not going to cry. I feel like it, but I am not going to.
She takes it back after he takes it badly, but her treatment of him seems plainly abusive. And indeed, Michael eventually complains of being physically mistreated by Jan.
I like cuddling and spooning, and she likes videotaping us during sex.
Oh my God.
The worst part is that she shows it to her therapist and they discuss it.
Michael, you need to get out of this.
But in one of the show's all-time purposefully cringe-inducing moments, he changes his mind after seeing Jan got her chest done.
I'll tell you this, it is not because of the boob job. Excuse me, boob enhancement. That would be shallow. And this is the opposite of shallow. This is emotionally magnificent.
By the end of the season, Jan's increasingly erratic performance, along with her frequent trips to Scranton, cost her her job. And in season 4, she moves in with Michael, setting the stage for what has frequently been ranked as The Office's best episode ever, Dinner Party.
What a cute bench.
Thanks, that's my bed. Jan has some space issues, so I curl up on that puppy.
The installment finds Michael roping Jim and Pam into a dinner party at his home. Michael and Jan openly fight in front of their guests, and over the course of the painful and revealing episode, it becomes clear that Jan has dictatorially taken over Michael's house and is regularly psychologically and emotionally abusive to him.
Before I lived here, the glass was always covered in smudges. And I moved in and I cleaned it, so I guess that makes me the double.
You are! She is!
The most awkward dinner party in television history finally ends when the fighting attracts attention from the police. Jan backs off, and Michael leaves his own home to go stay with Dwight. It's an unusually dark episode, even for The Office, and while the writers do manage to keep the proceedings surprisingly funny,
Good! I'll be your first customer!
You're hardly my first.
That's what she said!
the reality of Michael and Jan's dysfunctional relationship was genuinely disturbing. The incident also marks the end of their status as a couple, and fans were relieved to see Michael move on. But in the season finale, he discovers Jan is pregnant. Assuming he's the father, Michael is initially delighted by the development, but that changes after Jan reveals she secretly had herself artificially inseminated while they were still dating. She offers him the chance to join her at Lamaze class, inviting him to be a part of the pregnancy and resigning himself to the depressing notion that this is probably the best he's going to do in life.
I'm going to be kind of a daddy.
Michael becomes excited about what he comes to perceive as their child, and it seems like their abusive cycle is about to begin again. But when Jan then gives birth without even telling him, he is clearly shaken. No longer feeling a connection to Jan or her newborn, the incident proves to be the last straw for Michael. So when Jan asks him to refrain from asking Holly out on a date, he does it anyway, finally choosing something better for himself.
I didn't feel much when I held Astrid, but I got a good feeling from Holly.
Michael and Jan's romance was like the proverbial car accident you couldn't look away from, horrifying and mesmerizing all at the same time. Their relationship was toxic in the extreme and often uncomfortable to watch, but it was also always funny, and while no doubt unsettling, it never became stale or felt forced. It was a profound and well-earned ending to a difficult storyline, and never before in the history of sitcoms had audiences been so happy that the will they won't they couple didn't.
And then when you said you definitely didn't want to have kids, what, reverse back? Snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap.
So what do you think? Did Michael and Jan have the most toxic relationship on TV? And if not, who did? Let us know down in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, you'll definitely find others you like if you check out the rest of the channel. As always, thank you for subscribing to Nerdstalgic.